The day Child Protective Services knocked on my door, I knew someone out there wanted to take my daughter away from me. What I didn't know was that it all started over $4 missing and a stranger in a $1,000 suit standing 3 people behind me in a grocery line. If it were you, would you swallow your pride and take his help? Or would you rather go down fighting alone? My name is Amara. I'm a Black single mom, and this is the story of how being a few dollars short for baby formula dragged a millionaire, his jealous ex, the tabloids, and the entire system into my life, and how it forced me to decide what my dignity was really worth. It started on a Saturday at Morrison's grocery, under those harsh fluorescent lights that make everybody look a little more tired than they already are. I was standing in line 7, my heart pounding, one arm wrapped around my 2-year-old daughter Ava, the other hand clutching a single can of baby formula like it was made of gold. I had just come off a double night shift at the care home. My shoulders ached, my eyes burned, but moms don't get to clock out. You know what I mean, we just keep going. While the line inched forward, I slipped my hand into my pocket and counted the money again, even though I already knew what it added up to. 5 crumpled singles, 3 quarters, 2 dimes, 1 old beat-up penny that probably should have been retired years ago. 1466. The formula was 1847. No matter how many times I did that math in my head, it never changed. I was almost $4 short. $4, that's it, but when you're living on the edge, $4 feels like the Grand Canyon. Ava shifted in my arms. That little body heavier than usual because she'd been running a low fever all week. She let out this harsh, rattling cough that made my chest tighten like someone had reached inside and squeezed my heart. I tucked her closer, trying not to think about how much her medicine cost, how long I could stretch what we had, how far behind on rent I could fall before my landlord did something about it. In front of me, the conveyor belt moved, beeping with every scanned item, like a countdown to my humiliation. Next customer. Please. The cashier said, her voice flat with exhaustion. I stepped up, set the can of formula on the belt, with both hands lined up the label like that would somehow make it cheaper. The scanner beeped. 1847, she said, already glancing past me at the person behind, because women like me are usually just another problem to move past quietly. My throat went dry. I laid out my crumpled bills slowly, one by one, like I could stretch the seconds and the dollars at the same time. I'm sorry, I murmured, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. I don't have enough. I thought I did, but I'm short. She sighed. Not cruel, just tired. How much you got, honey? 1466. You're almost $4 short, honey. That honey stung in a way it wasn't meant to, like a pat on the head when you're drowning. I felt the heat crawling up my neck, all those invisible eyes on my back. I didn't have to turn around to feel it. Judgment has a weight to it. I straightened my shoulders anyway. It's fine, I said, trying to sound calm, grown in control. I'll just put it back. And then it hit. From behind me, a woman's voice, sharp and clear enough for everyone to hear, sliced the air. Some people shouldn't have kids if they can't afford them. I froze. Another voice chimed in, softer, but just as cutting. That's what happens when you don't plan ahead. If it were you standing there $4 short, while strangers dissected your entire life out loud, what would you do? Turn around and let them have it, or stare at the counter and pretend you were deaf? I kept my eyes on my hands. I reached for the can of formula, feeling my cheeks burn. I was not going to cry at that register. I'd learned a long time ago that tears don't bring kindness. They bring more judgment, more excuses for people to say, "See, she's unstable." And that's when another voice spoke up, this one, calm, low, and steady. "Excuse me." A man said I'd like to cover the difference. The energy around us shifted. You know that feeling when a room turns as one, when every pair of eyes moves from you to someone else. I turned, and that's when I saw him. White guy, late 30s, dark hair, expensive charcoal suit that looked like it had a tailor on retainer watch that probably cost more than my car back when I still had one. Next to him, this tiny blonde girl in a pink jacket clutching a stuffed rabbit, stared at me with big blue eyes, trying to figure out why the grown-ups were acting weird. For half a second, hope flickered in my chest. $4 solved problem gone. Then pride slammed that door shut so hard it rattled. "Thank you," I said carefully, like I was walking a thin line. But no, I can't accept that. It's just a few dollars. He looked more concerned than offended, already pulling out his wallet. "Please," he said. "Let me help." In that moment, all I could see was what I thought he saw when he looked at me. Charity case lesson for his daughter, remember? We help poor people, honey. Maybe that wasn't fair to him, but broke people learn to read faces and power the way rich people learn to read contracts. "I appreciate the offer," I said, jaw tight, voice sharper now, "but I'll manage on my own." The cashier glanced between us, clearly uncomfortable with the standoff. "Ma'am, if the gentleman wants to." I said no. I cut in a little louder than I meant, embarrassment and anger twisting together. I snatched the formula off the counter and hugged it to my chest, then forced myself to put it back on the shelf behind me. My fingers lingered on the metal edge for half a second, like I had to peel them off. Then I apologized to the cashier for holding up the line turned, and walked away with my head held high and my stomach in knots. I walked out of that store empty-handed, with a hungry, sick toddler on my hip and those women's words echoing in my head. Was that strength or just me choosing suffering with better packaging? I still ask myself that sometimes. Outside, the sky had that gray, heavy look, like it hadn't decided whether it was going to rain or not. I checked the bus app on my cracked phone. Delayed. 20 minutes. 20 minutes of cold wind on Ava's thin jacket and my frayed nerves. I pulled her closer under the flickering streetlight, kissing her curls. "It's okay, baby," I whispered. "We'll figure something out, we always do." That was a lie, and we both knew it. But some lies are like bandages you put them on so you can make it to the next step. While I rocked my baby at that bus stop, trying not to cry. Mr. Expensive Suit was out in the parking lot, loading groceries into a Mercedes SUV. He buckled his little girl into her car seat, patted his pockets, and realized his wallet was missing. He went back inside, talked to the cashier, got it back, and when he came out again, he saw me still standing there in the wind. He hesitated, then walked over, stopping a respectful distance away. "The bus running late?" he asked. "Yes," I said, turning slightly, recognizing him should be here soon. "Can I offer you a ride?" he said. But voice careful. "No strings attached, just a ride." "Thank you," I said, with a little smile that didn't touch my eyes. "But we're fine waiting." "I appreciate the thought, though." He nodded. Didn't push, which honestly earned him a tiny bit of respect. "Okay," he said, turning to go, then added, for what it's worth, "I think you're doing an amazing job. Being a parent is hard enough without strangers making it harder." That sentence, that simple little sentence, went straight through all my defenses. I felt my shoulders drop, just a little. "Thank you," I told him, and I meant it. He walked back to his car, his daughter pressing her face against the window to stare at us. A few minutes later, my bus finally wheezed up to the curb, and I climbed on with Ava empty hands and a heart that felt heavier than my kid. We went home to our tiny apartment with the peeling paint and the leak in the ceiling that I'd trained myself to ignore. I mixed the last of the formula we had left, added more water than I was supposed to, and told myself it was fine. I sat in our old armchair, held Ava against my chest, listened to the rain hit the bucket under the drip, and whispered, "Just one more night, baby girl. Just get through one more night and Mama will figure something out." Fast forward 3 days. Monday morning, I dropped Ava off at Sunshine Community Daycare, where I worked as a cleaner, and tried to ignore the tightness in my chest from lack of sleep. Rent was covered for the month barely. Food was a question mark. Ava's cough still hadn't gone away, but the free clinic opened that day, and I'd been clinging to that hope like a life raft. I was mopping the hallway when I heard voices in the main room. Excited, polite voices. The kind of tone people use when money walks into the building. I checked the whiteboard by the supply closet and felt my stomach drop. Today was donor visit day. Some tech company had sponsored new tablets and a playground renovation big deal for our little center. I'd completely forgotten. I tried to make myself invisible, but Lily's voice ruined that plan in 2 seconds. "Daddy, look, it's the lady from the store." I froze in the hallway. When I looked up there, he was in the director's office doorway, shaking hands with Mrs. Patterson. Same dark hair, different navy suit. Friendly smile turned slightly confused when he saw me. "This is a wonderful facility." He was saying, "My daughter Lily has been asking for more playmates, and your program seems perfect." Mrs. Patterson was beaming. "We really appreciate your company's sponsorship, Mr. Vance," she said. Vance. That was the first time I heard his name. I tried to slide away down the side hall, but kids don't care about adult awkwardness. Lily spotted Ava in the toddler room, dropped her stuffed rabbit next to her, and introduced herself like she'd been waiting all week for this reunion. Within minutes, they were building block towers together, giggling every time they knocked them down. "Do you two know each other?" Mrs. Patterson asked, glancing between me and Mr. Vance. "We've met briefly," he said, leaving it at that, and I silently thanked him. A little later in the break room, I was just settling in with a cup of terrible coffee when he showed up in the doorway, hands raised in this little I come in peace gesture. "I don't mean to intrude," he said. "I just wanted to apologize for the other day. At the store. I didn't mean to make things worse." "You don't need to apologize," I answered, taking a small sip to buy time. "You were being kind. I just couldn't accept it. For what it's worth," he said, "those people who said those things to you, they were wrong. Completely wrong." I looked up at him properly, then really looked. No pity in his eyes, just this sad, heavy kind of regret. "You eventually stop hearing them," I said, shrugging a little after a while. "It just becomes noise. You shouldn't have to learn that," he said quietly. "Maybe not," replied, nodding toward the playroom where our daughters were shrieking with laughter, "but that's the world we live in. At least they don't know that yet." We stood there for a second, watching Ava and Lily through the glass, like two people from different planets peeking into the same little universe. Then he noticed the bandage on my wrist. "What happened?" he asked. "Hot soup at my other job," I said, pulling my sleeve down. "I work nights at a care home. Sometimes residents need help with meals." I wasn't paying enough attention. "You work here during the day, and at a care home at night," he repeated, eyebrows rising. "I do what I need to do," I answered, letting the conversation die with that. His phone buzzed. He stepped aside, answered it, and in one sentence I saw the CEO version of him snap into place. "What do you mean the funds are missing?" he said, voice low and sharp. That money was earmarked for programs like this center. When he came back, he looked calmer, but his jaw was tight. I surprised myself by asking problem. "One of my executives thinks the company's charity budget is his personal spending account," he said. "I'll deal with it. Listen, Amara, if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to ask." Actually, I did need something. "The playground," I said, nodding, "outside the swings have been broken for months. The kids miss them. If your company could fix those, that would mean a lot." His face lit up a little. "Consider it done," he said, and that was that. Except when Friday came around, he didn't send a crew. He showed up himself in jeans and a t-shirt carrying a toolbox and spent 3 hours out there fighting rusted bolts and rotten boards. I watched him through the window, more than I want to admit, trying to fit this version of him into the little box I'd built for men with money. When the kids poured out and realized the swings were fixed, they screamed like it was Christmas. Ava ran toward that swing set like it was a finish line, then flew through the air, coughing less than she had in weeks, squealing with this pure joy I hadn't heard in too long. "You didn't have to do this yourself," I told him as he packed up. I know he said, wiping sweat from his forehead with his forearm, but it felt important. Sometimes you need to get your own hands dirty, not just sign a check. He asked about Ava again. I gave him my usual half answer about doctors, and she's managing. And then we went back to our separate worlds. That afternoon, exhaustion finally claimed the bill it was owed. During closing while wiping down tables, the room suddenly tilted sideways. My knees buckled. I grabbed the back of a chair so hard my fingers hurt. For a second, everything went grainy and far away. "Ms. Coleman." Mrs. Patterson called, rushing over. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." I lied. Breathing shallow, just stood up too fast. "When did you last eat?" she asked, hands on her hips. I actually had to think about it. "Yesterday morning, I think." She sat me down, pressed a juice box and some crackers into my hands. "You're not taking the kids' food." "Trust me," she said when I protested. "You can't pour from an empty cup, Amara." That night, while I was dragging myself to my night shift, Ethan was sitting in his office, staring at the city lights, thinking about a woman he barely knew, almost passing out at work. The cough he'd heard from her daughter, the burn on her wrist. Grief and money make a dangerous combination sometimes, and his grief was louder than his caution. He opened his laptop, typed my name into a search bar, and there it was. The fundraiser I had made months earlier in pure desperation. Help save baby Ava. A picture of me in a hospital chair, hair scraped back. Eyes swollen from crying with this tiny baby in my arms, hooked up to more wires than I had ever seen in my life. A description of a rare genetic condition treatment protocol's surgery, costs that looked like phone numbers. Goal $50,000. Amount raised $842. That's when he decided he was going to fix it, no matter what anyone else said. He talked to his legal guy the next day. The lawyer warned him that unsolicited big donations can backfire, can look suspicious, can get frozen, can even lead to lawsuits, especially when the person has already turned your help down once. Ethan heard him nodded, then went ahead and did what he wanted anyway. He set up a dummy name, Clearwater Medical Foundation, and moved $49,000 into my fundraiser in one shot. I was at work when my phone started lighting up. Emails, text alerts, donation notifications. I checked the app and almost dropped my phone. The bar was full, the total just a hair under the goal. For about 10 seconds I felt actual hope, like maybe for once in my life, the miracle went to me instead of everyone else. Then the second email came in. Due to a large anonymous donation from an unverified source, your fundraiser has been temporarily frozen while we investigate. This is for your protection. Frozen. No access, no timeline. I called them immediately. The woman on the phone sounded sympathetic, but she was reading from a script. I could hear it. "My daughter needs treatment," I said, trying not to yell. "I can't use any of this money now. I'm very sorry, ma'am." She said it. "We just need to verify the donation. Large anonymous gifts can sometimes be fraudulent. We'll resolve it as quickly as possible." They couldn't even tell me what quickly meant. I Googled Clearwater Medical Foundation. Nothing. No website, no listing, no reviews, like it had been created out of thin air. And then it clicked. Someone with money. Someone connected to medical things. someone who had already tried to help me and been shut down. I went to the bank where I'd once tried to get a loan, begged a teller I half knew to look at the transaction details. She told me she couldn't give specifics, but after a lot of pleading, she leaned in and whispered something that made my blood boil. "Routing looks like Vance Industries." That afternoon, I walked into his glass tower of an office building with my heart pounding out of my chest. The security guard at the front desk asked if I had an appointment. I said no, but told him my name, told him to tell Mr. Vance I was there. A few tense minutes later, I was in an elevator headed up to a floor I had no business being on. His office was ridiculous, all floor-to-ceiling windows and expensive art. He stood up when I walked in, surprise all over his face. "Amara, why would you humiliate me like that?" I cut him off, voice shaking. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I was trying to help," he said. Frowning, "By making me look like a scammer," I shot back. "The platform froze the whole account because your big anonymous donation looks fake. I can't access any of the money at all. My daughter needs treatment, and now I have nothing because you decided to play God. They froze it." He repeated slowly. Like that part hadn't even occurred to him. "Of course you didn't know," I said, anger spilling over. "Now you think money always fixes things. You think you can throw cash at a problem and then walk away feeling like a savior. Some of us want more than your pity. We want respect." Those words landed. I could see it in his face. He wasn't used to people talking to him like that. But he also wasn't used to being wrong in ways that hurt someone this much. "I do respect you," he said, quieter. "That's why I tried to do it anonymously, so you wouldn't feel what I snapped. Indebted, humiliated like a charity case who should send you a thank you card and stay in her place." My eyes burned, but I forced the tears back. I was not going to dissolve in his office. "You saw me at my lowest moment," I said, "and decided you needed to save me. But I don't need a savior. I need people to see me as a person who's fighting as hard as she can, not a project." He was quiet for a long second, jaw working like he was chewing on words that didn't taste good. "My wife," he said, finally, voice low, "had the same condition Ava does. The same rare genetic disorder. That knocked the wind right out of me." "What?" "She died 3 years ago," he said. "Before Lily turned 4. I had all the money in the world, every specialist, every experimental drug, and it still wasn't enough. When I heard Ava's cough, when I saw that fundraiser, I thought maybe I could do for your daughter what I couldn't do for my wife." The anger didn't disappear, but it changed shape, mixed with something like grief that wasn't even mine. I felt my shoulders drop just a little. "I'm sorry about your wife," I said honestly. "I really am. But that doesn't give you the right to make decisions over my life in secret." "You're right," he said. No hesitation this time. I overstepped. "I should have talked to you. I should have asked. Let me fix the mess I made. I'll call the platform, verify everything legally, unfreeze the account, and we'll put this in writing. No secret foundation name, no mystery. A loan, a grant, whatever, lets you feel like you still have agency. Your terms, your schedule." That word, "agency," hit me harder than money at that point. "Fine," I said. Exhausted. "Make it legal, make it clear, put it all on paper. And one more thing, stop trying to stand above me. If you want to help, stand next to me." "Agreed," he said. And we shook hands. Two people standing on opposite sides of a chasm, trying to build a bridge with whatever we had left. For a while, things actually looked hopeful. The fundraiser money moved correctly. The loan papers were fair. Ava started treatment, and for the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling like someone was standing on my chest. She laughed more, coughed less, played harder with Lily at daycare. The doctors used cautious words like responding well and positive indicators, and I held on to those words like a lifeline. Ethan and I settled into a rhythm, seeing each other at the daycare, swapping updates about our daughters, exchanging these small, awkward but genuine moments of connection. We weren't friends exactly, not yet, but we weren't strangers either. Then a photo blew all of that up. One of his PR staff saw us outside the hospital one afternoon talking by his car. I had just gotten some stressful test results, and he'd put his hand on my shoulder for half a second in this quick human gesture of support. To the camera, it looked intimate. It looked like something else entirely. 3 days later, a tabloid headline screamed, "Tech millionaire's mystery woman. Secret romance with single mom." No names at first, just a blurry picture, wild speculation, the usual garbage. Internet detectives did their thing. Within days, they had my name, my job at the daycare, screenshots of my fundraiser, my entire life laid out for strangers to judge. The second wave of articles was worse. Poor cleaner catches rich boss. Single mom half his age. They painted me as either a scheming gold digger or a helpless victim. They never paint us as actual people, have you noticed that? Parents at the daycare started whispering. Conversation stopped when I walked into a room. Mrs. Patterson called me into her office with this pained look on her face. "The board is concerned." She said, not meeting my eyes. "They think the publicity could damage the center's reputation." "I haven't done anything wrong," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm not in some secret relationship with him. He's helping with my daughter's medical bills, that's it." "I believe you," she said softly. "I do. But they've decided to let you go. Effective immediately." I fought it, but "You're firing me because a rich man decided to help my kid," I said, half laughing, half choking. "Do you think that's fair?" I'd love to hear your answer to that in the comments, because in that moment, it felt like the whole world was telling me, know your place. I walked out, collected Ava, and went home, only to find my landlord waiting at my door with a smug expression and another sheet of paper. "Rent's doubling next month." He said all this media stuff, cameras outside. I gotta protect my other tenants. "You can't do that," I said, juggling Ava on my hip and this new nightmare in my hand. "Month-to-month lease," he said, tapping the fine print I can adjust with notice. "Take it or leave." I went inside, shut the door, slid down the wall, and let myself cry where Ava couldn't see my face. 3 days later, the knock came. 2 women with badges and polite smiles. "Ms. Coleman." One said, "We're from Child Protective Services. We received a report about your living situation. Do you mind if we come in?" A report. Someone out there looked at everything happening in my life and decided the answer was, take her child. They walked through my apartment, noting the leaks in the ceiling, the mattress on the floor we used as a bed, the small amount of food in the fridge. They asked about my jobs, my income, my relationship with Ethan. They checked Ava for bruises, took notes every time she coughed. After an hour that felt like years, they left. They didn't take her, not that day, but they left a thick file and a warning about housing violations and a promise to follow up. As soon as the door closed, I fell apart. I held Ava so tight she wriggled, whispering, "They're not taking you. I swear to God they're not taking you." That same week, Ethan received an anonymous email that said, "Stop interfering, or the child goes into the system. Your choice." Yeah, that happened. His security team started digging. They noticed a black car that had been sitting outside my building off and on, following me from the bus stop. They traced plate numbers, dug into bank records, and eventually everything pointed to one person, his ex, Victoria. She'd been trying to claw her way back into his life for years, furious that he wouldn't put the ring back on her finger. Now here she was paying paparazzi to follow me, calling in anonymous tips to CPS, weaponizing my poverty and my daughter's illness to punish him. While all of that was happening in the shadows, Ava's condition suddenly nosedived. The doctors told me the treatment that had worked so well at first had hit a complication. She needed emergency surgery within 2 weeks, or everything we'd gained would be lost. Cost $75,000 not covered, Not negotiable. I left that consultation room feeling like my bones had turned to glass. 75,000 might as well have been 75 million. I went home, did the math, did it again, and realized there was no math that solved this. There was one thing left to sell, my wedding ring. The last thing of Michael's I could still touch. It had belonged to his grandmother. Simple gold band with a small diamond. He'd slipped it onto my finger before he shipped out. Kissed my hand. Promised me we'd build a life when he got back. He never did. Standing in that pawn shop, sliding the ring off my finger felt like betraying him. Like erasing him one final time. I can give you 1,200. The guy behind the counter said. Bored like we were talking about a toaster. It's worth more than that, I whispered. Maybe to you, he shrugged. That's what I can sell it for. Take it or leave it. 1,200 wouldn't fix the surgery bill, but it would cover rent, food, bus fare. I took it. I walked out with cash in my pocket. Bare skin on my ring finger and a hole in my chest. I can still feel if I think about it too hard. What I didn't know was that one of Victoria's hired photographers had followed me there, snapping pictures as I left, ready to sell a new story. Millionaire's mistress selling his gift, some nonsense like that. Thankfully, Ethan's security team intercepted him, forced him to delete the photos. But the damage in my head was done. I felt hunted. For 2 weeks, I ignored Ethan's calls. I ignored everyone's calls. I put my head down, worked as many shifts as I could, barely slept, tried to patch together something that looked like a plan to save my child. Then, one afternoon, an envelope arrived in the mail addressed to Ava. Inside was a crayon drawing from Lily. 4 stick figures holding hands labeled, Daddy Me Ava and Ava's Mama, with big crooked letters at the top that said, We're the same. I love you. Ava carried that picture around like it was sacred, telling everyone my sister sent this. Watching her little face light up, I couldn't keep the wall up anymore. I picked up my phone and finally called Ethan. Amara. He answered on the first ring. Voice choked with relief. Are you okay? No, I said. Finally. Saying it out loud. I'm really not. Ava needs emergency surgery, $75,000. I've tried everything. I even sold my wedding ring. I can't do this alone. Why didn't you tell me as soon as you knew he asked, not accusing, just hurt? Because I am so tired of needing help. I admitted I am so tired of being the person who can't get through life without somebody else's money. Needing help doesn't make you weak, he said. It makes you human. So I'm asking. I said, voice breaking officially as your loan partner, or charity case, or whatever label makes this easiest for your lawyers. Please help me save my daughter. You never have to ask me twice where Ava's concerned. He said we'll handle the surgery. We'll figure out terms later. Right now we get her into that operating room. Stick around because what happened next didn't just change my life. It changed the lives of hundreds of families I've never met. And it might make you rethink what rich people and poor people can actually be to each other. While the hospital scheduled Ava's surgery, Ethan went to war in the only way rich men know how. Lawyers, boardrooms, press conferences. He filed lawsuits against the tabloids. His team dug deeper into Victoria's finances and found a whole history of embezzling money from charities, including funds that were supposed to go to medical research. He called an emergency meeting with his foundation's board and pitched something huge, a brand new initiative called the Ava and Lily Foundation, focused specifically on helping single parents pay for life-saving medical care for their kids. He pledged $50 million of his own money to start and told them he wanted me on staff as community outreach, not as a token, but as the person who actually knew what it felt like to choose between rent and medicine. Some of the board members frowned, worried about optics, worried about hiring the woman the tabloids had just finished tearing apart. He pushed back hard. He told them that if they cared more about optics than kids' lives, they could find another CEO. At the same time, he went back to the daycare board. The same people who'd fired me to protect their reputation, and told them he would make a major donation to the center on one condition. They rehire me in a better position, with better pay, with my dignity restored. They caved faster than I expected, called me with apologies, offered me a new role. That's when I realized he wasn't just throwing money at my problems anymore. He was actually trying to hand some of his power over to me. Ava's surgery was brutal and beautiful. I sat in that waiting room with my entire life hanging on a surgeon's hands. Ethan was somewhere in the building, not at my side, but nearby, talking to billing, checking with doctors, doing the things his last name and bank account gave him access to. When they finally called me back, and I saw her in recovery, small but breathing easier color, back in her cheeks, I cried in this ugly, shaking way that had nurses patting my shoulders and saying, "She's okay, Mama. She's okay." While she healed, the foundation became real. The scandal flipped on its head. The same media that had called me a gold digger started calling me an inspiring single mother. I have mixed feelings about that, but I used the platform anyway. The official launch event for the Ava and Lily Foundation happened a few months later at the hospital. Ethan stood on stage in a suit, lights in his face, cameras pointed at him, and said, "This foundation exists because of one woman who refused to be just a charity case." Then he called me up. If you'd told me a year before I'd be walking onto a stage in front of a room full of rich people and TV cameras, I would have laughed in your face. But there I was, in my thrifted dress that Mrs. Patterson helped me find, hands shaking around the microphone. A year ago, I told them I was $4 short for formula in a grocery store line. I thought that moment was just another humiliation in a long list of them. But I see now it was the start of something bigger. I told them about dignity and pride and stubbornness, about how sometimes saying no to help feels like the only power you have left, but how sometimes real strength is letting someone stand beside you instead of above you. I told them about Ava's laugh now, how she ran without coughing, how Lily called her my little sister. The video of that speech ended up online and went viral. People in the comments called me everything from a hero to an idiot for ever refusing that $4 in the first place. Some said Ethan was just trying to buy redemption for not being able to save his wife. Maybe they're all a little right. Real life is messy like that. And then right when I thought the story couldn't twist anymore, a letter arrived in my mailbox that made my knees go weak. It was addressed to Ethan, but delivered to my apartment by mistake. The return address was from a military family charity tied to the unit my husband had served in. The letter was a donor thank you, listing his contributions over the years, and attached a list of families who had received assistance from the fund 5 years earlier. Halfway down that list was my name, Amara Coleman, widow of Sergeant Michael Coleman. $5,000 housing and medical assistance during pregnancy. I remembered that money like a dream. I'd gotten a check back then, thought it was some government benefit. Finally processing cried in my tiny studio and used it to avoid eviction and pay for an ultrasound. I had no idea some stranger named Ethan Vance had written the check that made that possible. I took the letter to a coffee shop, called him, and when he walked in, I just slid it across the table. He read it, went quiet, then looked up at me with this stunned expression. I didn't know he said I've been donating to that fund for years, but they keep it anonymous on purpose. I never knew who it went to. You helped me years before we ever met. I said, my voice thick. You kept me and Ava off the street before she was even born. Then you walked into that grocery store and watched me put back a can of formula like we were strangers. He shook his head, almost laughing from disbelief. This is insane, he said. I thought the universe started messing with us at Morrison's not way back then. Apparently it likes a slow burn, I said. That's not all, he added, pulling up a file on his phone. Dr. Morrison explained something to me a while back about the treatment protocol Ava got. You know those experimental trials my wife went through that didn't work. The data from her case is part of what led to the treatment that saved Ava. If Elizabeth hadn't gone through that, he didn't finish, but he didn't have to. My heart was racing. Your wife's suffering helped build the treatment that saved my daughter, I said slowly. Yeah, he said, eyes wet for the first time since I'd known him. And the charity I gave to after Michael's death helped keep you stable long enough to bring Ava into the world. We were crossing paths long before a can of formula at Morrison's. We sat there in silence for a minute. A widow and a widower, a poor black mom, and a rich white CEO, realizing that our lives had been stitched together by grief and generosity years before any camera caught us in the same frame. So here's the question I really want to leave you with, and I want honest answers in the comments. Do you think all of this is just coincidence? Or do some encounters really happen for a reason? And if they do, what responsibility do we have to each other when our lives collide like that? Today, the Ava and Lily Foundation has helped hundreds of families pay for surgeries, treatments, medications they never could have afforded otherwise. There's a pediatric wing at the hospital with their names on the wall, not because they're special, but because their friendship built something bigger than both of them. I work there now, not as a cleaner, but as someone who sits with scared parents and says, I've been where you are, and there is a way through this. Morrison's Grocery put up a small bronze plaque by checkout 7. It says, in memory of where kindness began. They started a program where customers can quietly pay part of someone else's grocery bill in advance. No spotlight, no calling people out at the register, just a cashier saying, you're covered today, and another mom walking out with her head a little higher. Sometimes I go there, stand in that line with a full cart, just to remember what it feels like to be $4 short, with the whole world watching. I still ask myself if I could go back, would I take his money that first time? Would things have been easier? Or would something important in me have cracked in a way I couldn't fix? So I'm asking you now, when someone reaches out a hand in your darkest moment, is refusing them an act of strength? Or is it another way we punish ourselves for needing people? Do you think I was right to say no at that register? Or do you think my pride made everything harder than it had to be? And on the flip side, if you were in Ethan's position, how far would you go to help a stranger before it stopped being kindness and started being control? Drop your thoughts in the comments, don't hold back. Tell me if you think this was fate, or just a long string of coincidences. Tell me if you've ever turned down help you wish you'd taken or given help that blew up in your face. And if this story hit you anywhere in your chest, do me a favor. Hit like so it reaches someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe if you want more real stories about dignity struggle and the weird ways our lives intertwine. And most of all, share your own story down there. Because in the end, it wasn't about the money, the lawsuit, the headlines, or even the foundation. It was about being seen, about one person looking at another and saying, I see you, you matter. Let me stand next to you while we figure this out. And that's a story all of us are still writing one choice at a time.